This is AKASHVANI, Bengaluru. Good evening and welcome to tonight's Yuvavani. Tonight, we have Shloak Vatsal, a research student from IISc Bangalore in our studio. He's going to explain about science communication. So Shloak, what is science communication? It means telling people about what science you're doing, right? So isn't research papers a kind of science communication?
Thank you for having me here, ma'am. Actually, research papers, when they are published majorly for the scientific community. They are published so that the research work that is being done by the people are expressed to the people who want to carry it forward and who want to learn from that research. For the general public, for people who are outside the scientific domain, the research papers become quite technical and difficult to understand. Especially it involves terminologies that are at the very edge of science that can be very difficult for people to understand with, let's say, school level of science education. Or even for people who are in a different field of science, when they want to learn something outside their own field, it becomes quite difficult. So what science communication does is bridge this gap between the scientists and the people. What science communication people try to do is convert whatever is written in a difficult and jargony language, we can say, into something simpler that people can understand.
But why is that required? Why is it important to communicate science to laymen? Why is it so important for general public to know the high level of science research taking place?
As we know, science and society cannot be separate from each other. Science, whatever is being done in that field, is being done for the people, for the use and benefit of the general people. So, unless the people know what science is being done in the country or in the world, it would be very difficult to form opinions about things. Let's say a few months back we had COVID. So, vaccines were developed by scientists and a lot of miscommunication happened. There was a trust gap between the people and the scientists a lot of times. And so you would have seen many people rejecting vaccines initially. That's why it is necessary to convey the information that the science that is being done is for the people. Apart from it, we also saw a lot of misinformation regarding the solutions to COVID-19. A lot of times it was conveyed that some non-scientific approach can be undertaken, and many people tried these approaches and it failed, and that caused a lot of damage to the society, I would say. A lot of people died taking these alternative forms of medicine or alternative techniques, let's say. Similar things can be seen where in some villages, whenever people get a fever or some other kind of disease, they blame it on some unnatural phenomena, not on the causative agent. So those kinds of things happen in the society, and that's why people should be informed that a scientific approach to this is a better method to solve the problem.
Who are these science communicators? And what are the media that they are using to communicate this?
You would have seen many newspapers, journals publish a scientific research page once in a week. We see many newspaper outlets containing these science articles, what is happening in the society. Similarly, there are dedicated science journals. There are dedicated websites like India Bioscience that convey this kind of research that is happening. Apart from it, many institutes have their own offices of communication, science communication departments, which try to bring out the research that is happening. The problem, what we can say in this is that the science communication field is very vast. It is not very well managed or not very well associated to each other. Let's say a news breaks out about a new scientific discovery. So each journal or each newspaper tries to cover it on its own or differently. And due to this, there is no structure, no communication between the science communicators. In one way, we can say that. That is something that needs to be bridged.
Could you give us an example of any kind of miscommunication or misinformation that happened, and how was it set straight?
I would once again take the example of COVID-19 because it was quite recent. In the initial days, we know plasma therapy was being very popularly used in many hospitals, clinics, and people were encouraged to donate their plasma when they were infected. But later on, it was shown that it was not a very effective method, and actually finding a vaccine would be the most appropriate way of moving forward. This was also done in our country, in many other countries of the world, and this is how it was seen that a miscommunication that was done initially actually led to a loss of lives and wrong treatments being given to people, which caused a lot of damage.
What is the state of the science communication in our country? Is it being taken at the level that it requires?
As I mentioned, science communication in India is a little unstructured. We do not have fixed career paths like we have for journalism or, let's say, for becoming a scientist. So, what is happening is most of the science communication being done in India is being done by scientists. This actually creates a gap, as I mentioned, because a lot of jargon that people may not understand, a lot of nitty-gritties of science that people may not understand, are not being conveyed to them very properly. The government has tried to bring forward new policies that can actually promote science communication. Vigyan Prasar is one such organization that has been publishing magazines in Hindi, English, and many other Indian languages. A major problem that arises, especially in India, is that we have a lot of diversity in languages here. Science, as it has been taught and is being done in the country, is mainly in the English medium. Most of the terminologies at the cutting edge of science have been developed mainly in the English language, and that actually creates a barrier while conveying it to the people because we do not have terms for these words in the vernacular languages. Good initiative that has been started by the Ministry of Education is publishing of these dictionaries by CSTT that contains a list of many scientific words that are commonly used, but a better policy structure should be developed so that whenever a new field of science or a further research in science happens, terminologies can be developed for them in vernacular languages easily. Apart from it, science communication, not just on the level of newspapers or journals, but it should also be promoted at the level of school education. We know mostly school science education takes place with the help of textbooks, let's say, or some labs that are part of the curriculum. But I think children should be encouraged to read these journals or read these magazines that are there. Apart from it, as I mentioned, mostly science journalism takes place with newspapers or some dedicated science journals. But a new thing should be implemented where science journalism is actually promoted at the same level as normal, let's say, sports journalism is, or fashion journalism is, crime journalism is. Yes. So science should not be left behind in this field, and especially if India wants to promote science and wants to become a advanced nation, science communication will play a major role in the years to come.
So, this need for science communication, has it been recognized recently, or has science community recognized its importance for very long? Because it's a rather new term, I've never heard about it.
Science communication in India is a little unstructured, mainly because it is done by scientists and hence is seen as a waste of resource and time, because that time can be given directly to publishing more papers or doing more science. One thing that we have recognized recently, especially India, if people need to be attracted to science, if the best of people need to be brought into this field, they should be communicated science at a more basic level, a more grassroots level. Western countries have a more structured field. It mainly arises because their journalism towards science has been active for a very long time. In India, the need was mainly recognized after 1970s, 1980s, when computers were introduced, when it was finally seen that involving people into science outside the existing scientific circles would actually help in bringing better resources, better people into this field and doing better science. The National Institute for Science Communication was set up in 2002. Now it has been transformed into National Institute of Science Communication and Policy Research in New Delhi. So these kinds of things are being done, and there are plans to actually introduce formal courses in science journalism, science communication, and there are internship programs, workshops that are regularly held. There is one program called Avsar by the Government of India where it promotes PhD and postdoc students in the country to actually participate in science communication to communicate what they are doing. I think these programs should be expanded to include school children, undergraduate students, and professors as well, so that they can be incentivized to communicate their research and communicate research that is happening around the world to people in a better way.
So these science communicators, like you said, now proper training is being given to them. Probably going to be a new job prospect. So these communicators, can they be only people from science community?
No, it is not necessary. Sports journalists have not traditionally been people who play the sport, but journalists who have an interest in sports are also very well established sports journalists. A similar thing can happen with science communication. Though, yes, a basic knowledge of science is required, but a lot of things can be learned along the way. And I think that's why there's a need of a specific science journalism course apart from the normal journalism course that is existing in the country, so that these basic terminologies, etc., can be introduced to the people, especially the fields that India is trying to progress in, the sunshine fields as they are called. These are at the cutting edge of science, and hence the people are getting more and more disconnected from them because the requirement of their technicalities is higher. So these things should be introduced into the curriculum, and I would say people who want to join science communication right now, it is not a very big barrier at the moment, mainly because it can be learned along the way, and there are these, as I mentioned, workshops and other things.
Are there any institutes right now in the country which are providing science journalism as a course?
Not exactly a full course, but there are many internship programs. For example, the Office of Communication at ISC here in Bangalore offer one such internship. Apart from it, ISER Pune and offers an internship workshop. Similarly, NCBS in Bangalore, the National Center for Biological Sciences, offers workshop of 1 month. So these kinds of things are mainly meant for science-based people to switch to science journalism. But in order to promote general people to join science communication, we'll have to launch full 2 years or 3 years programs. A major problem that scientists face while communicating science to people is to know how to bridge the gap between their level of expertise and technicalities and the people's. So I think it is similar to the journalism field, how to pitch ideas. Every year there are more and more number of papers coming out everywhere in the world. And to find the right stories, to find what stories to pitch forward, what the people would like, and what can actually make an impact in the world. So these things need to be learned, and it is quite similar to what maybe journalists learn. I'll give an example. Let's say research wins a Nobel Prize. So those get a lot of attention because people suddenly get interested in that. There are only 6 or 7 Nobel Prizes awarded each year. But there are many groundbreaking research that are happening at all times. Many times what happens is the Nobel Prize is awarded 20 years after the research happened. In order to make the people understand the importance of the research, I think these science communicators need to learn those skills where they can identify these new research.
And the purpose, the goal of this science communication, is it only to impart information to the general public? What other goals can it achieve?
First and foremost is yes, to impart information, but it can also shape opinions of people regarding science. Let's say gene therapy that is performed for many diseases. Some scientists in China perform gene therapy on fetuses before they are born. There was a lot of uproar even in the scientific world and of course in the general populace's mind. Science communicators can play a role of informing the people about what the positives of this kind of program can be or the negatives of this kind of program can be. Because in the end, it's the people who choose the representatives, who choose what kind of science will be promoted in the country. The need of this has arisen because people have become interested in technologies like AI or electrical energy, renewable sources of energy. And so these are the fields where perception has played a role recently. And there will be more fields as we are progressing.
Thank you, Shloak. It was enlightening. I'm very happy that we shared this information with our audience. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, ma'am.
This program was brought to you by AKASHVANI, Bengaluru.